Midwest, home sweet home in good old Indiana, place of small towns, cozy families gathered together, and fields of corn and rustic woods. But, like any town, there is a dark underbelly that often goes unnoted. We are part of that darkness. We lurk in the shadows to bring you the best in horror, metal, and stories of the grotesque. This is Blood in the Cornfields. Welcome, everyone. This is Blood in the Cornfields podcast. This is our very, very first episode, so we welcome you all in. Thank you for listening. I am Mark. I am one of the hosts here, and I have with me my co-host.
Hey, I'm Ivy, so thank you all for tuning in. This is wonderful. I don't know how many there are of you, but thank you for listening in advance. We appreciate that.
Exactly. So for today, we're not going to have any topics. We may find ourselves on this podcast talking about, true crime stuff. If it's going to be true crime, we're going to keep it Midwest. That's where we're located.
Yep.
We are also going to talk about horror movies. We're going to talk about heavy metal. We may talk about cryptids. We may do, ghost stories, on-site stuff. We don't really know. So we're just going to get into a whole bunch of stuff. So I guess first off, backgrounds.
Yeah. So let's talk about, how did we even birth this podcast? Like, where did this even come from?
So the podcast pretty much came about. It was actually your idea. You recommended to me. So a little while ago, I was trying to formulate a social club around horror movies and, just have fun and go to events, do like movie screenings, different things like that. But I am terrible with social media and people are really hard to commit to things nowadays. So I was kind of having terrible luck. And you had the bright idea of, hey, why don't we start a podcast and, maybe generate some attention and then do it kind of that way. But
we feel podcast, for one, is a little bit more accessible. Literally everyone has one by now at this point. But also at the same time, this is unique. How many other podcasts do you know cover just the Midwest?
Yeah.
Like, none that I know of. I mean, maybe you know of some, but
absolutely. And for me, with the true crime stuff that we're going to talk about and that we have episodes queued up and stuff, we're not going to shy away from stuff that's important to this area and stuff that is even brutal. And I say that in a sense of, I think it's a very important, and I know Ivy shares the same sentiments, that if we're talking about a true crime and it's something that, is heavy in brutality, the person actually went through that. So to minimize that or to sugarcoat it, I think does an injustice to that victim and what they actually suffered. And I think, out of respect for that, you need to hear and understand everything that went through that person's story. Mm-hmm. And I think it's disrespectful to cheat them by not hearing it all, even if you don't want to.
Yeah, and there's already too much stigma around the popularity of, the killers. And we're not about that. Yeah. We already have the fake serial killers like our Jasons and our Michael Myers and Freddy Kruegers.
Leatherface.
Leatherface. We already have these fake horrors in the world based on real horrors. So let's actually focus on the real, true life, true crime that happened. So that way we can honor these victims and to help, hopefully, share their story to help you understand, hey, these are real people. Fuck those other people that did all these bad things to them.
Absolutely. So kind of with that being said, I guess we'll dive into like our personal background, what got us interested in horror, that sort of stuff. So I'm going to kick to you and let you go first.
Oh, okay. Well, for me, horror was always something that I feel like came naturally to me, or I just had an interest in. I think it really started with my dad, who got me into horror movies growing up when I was a little kid. He was the kid of the 80s was my dad.
Yes, I was the kid of the 80s too.
Yeah. So that tells you our ages already right off the bat. But he got me into Nightmare on Elm Street. Freddy Krueger was his man, and I just enjoyed it. Those were the things that my dad and I bonded over, was makeup effects, because my dad was an artist. and was also just how practical effects worked in movies. And he was always constantly telling me, hey, this is how this and this works. And because he was an artist, sometimes he would break it down and show me exactly how he saw that they would work. And not to mention, he was a big Tom Savini fan, as I am now too.
Yes, absolutely.
I picked that up from my dad. But yeah, I always feel like that's always been a part of me, and not to mention, follows me pretty much my whole entire life in, a spooky sense, because, when I was a teenager, I went through my goth, and it was never a phase, because I still am.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not a phase, because present day, hello.
If you just take one good look at me, like, that wasn't a phase, ma'am. But, I was very darkly inclined, and then finally got into goth music and also metal music and punk much later on in life. I guess you could say, goth music is post-punk. I know, shush.
Yeah.
But regardless, I really enjoyed that stuff. And not to mention, as far as my job, my professional career, I am a mortician. Very proud of that, and being able to help so many people, one, be laid to rest, and also so many of the living that are left over, to be able to help them with their grieving process. So I feel very honored to be able to do that as a mortician, and to kind of keep with my, spooky vibe.
Yeah, absolutely. And the mortician thing, of course, ties into me and you.
Yep.
So that is actually how we met. So another factor into this podcast is my best friend, Blake, who passed away. And we, as kids, would every weekend go to PJ's Video. We would pull off all just like insane horror movies that are still nowadays out of print. And I don't know how like PJ's Video had some of these, but we would just rent just random movies every weekend. And he's the only person really in my circle or my clique that was into horror movies as much as me. And so, I knew Blake since I was 8, I believe.
Aww.
So yeah, turning 42 now. He passed away 2 years ago. So do the math. That's pretty much 40. No, not 40 years, because then that'd be a 0. Hey, my math is terrible. But no, I've known him so long, and to kind of segue to how we met. So Blake had passed away, and it was in, the height of COVID. And
oh man, it was rough.
Yeah. So where we are is small town Indiana. So with Blake knowing horror movies, I show up at the funeral just expecting like, oh man, don't have this like, not that Blake didn't believe in God or anything, but like, please, let's not have this super religious, because he wouldn't have liked it. Like, let's, I don't want people in suits and ties and all this sort of stuff. Like, no, Blake was not. He was a party on type guy. So when I show up, like the funeral home, I remember going in and then being in the, like, what do you call it, like the viewing room?
Yeah, like the viewing area, the chapel as we call it.
Yeah. So went in there, and there's like all these pictures and like props, but for me the music was what I noticed right off the bat, because it had like music and all this stuff playing, and I'm like, holy shit, like who did this? Because I'm like, I didn't do it, and I know there's nobody else in Blake's life that would have done it. So I end up talking to, I think, Blake's father or maybe one of the directors, and was like, hey, who did this? And was introduced to Ivy. And basically, from what I understood, is like she saw Blake come in and felt like a special connection, was like, oh, I got to do this right. And so, a bunch of props from your personal collection and different things like that. So I was just blown away. And then that's how I was introduced to you. And, like I always tell, anyone that'll ever listen, the biggest compliment I could ever give to you was I could not tell that whoever put this together did not know Blake, like had never actually met him, and to me, that's the biggest compliment I could ever give to you. So
that is the biggest compliment any funeral director can get, honestly. And I greatly appreciate it, because like I said, I just felt this connection with Blake from the first time I quote unquote met him.
Yeah.
I saw his tattoos, and he had the most amazing Evil Dead tattoos, and I was just like, oh my god.
He had some interesting ones, other
oh
too.
My god. And he also had help me out here, the
Devil's Rejects.
Yep. He had Captain Spaulding, and I was just like,
yeah.
Oh my mouth dropped open. I'm like, this is a man after my own heart. Yeah. I need to do something. And I remember the funeral director that was working with Blake's family came up to me and said, his father would really like to meet you.
Yeah.
You guys have a lot of things in common.
Yep.
Can we do something to make this a little bit extra special for Blake? And I'm like, oh, I'm on it.
Yeah.
Give me just a couple seconds. I got this.
Yeah.
And I think the coolest part of Blake's services was everyone was requested to wear a horror movie themed shirt. I was just like, oh yes.
Yeah.
This is a guy that we could have been friends with. And I'm very sad that I never got to meet Blake, but I'm glad that we're doing this podcast in his memory as well.
Yeah, absolutely too. So, I mean, with that being said, I didn't want to cut you off in your story of horror and stuff like that. But, you know, it directly ties in my background because it's heavily around Blake. Like I said, you know, in my early teen years, I mean, Blake was a partier, definitely. But, like, for me, you know, I don't smoke, don't drink. Like, I'm about as clean as you literally can get. And so, like, we still were big-time friends, you know. And he had his group of friends that went out, did drugs, partied, all that sort of stuff. But, like, with us, it was, you know, really about, you know, watching horror movies and all that sort of stuff. And, you know, some of the early stuff that I can remember getting into, and my middle brother, Eric, also was a huge influence for that when I was a bit younger, you know, because he's a little bit older than me. And so we would watch stuff together. But, you know, early things that I remember watching was like Phantasm. Early on, Phantasm was one of the, I would say, first series that I remember watching, and Faces of Death.
That's awesome.
Because it was like at the time, you know, that there was like,
there was that hype.
Yes, absolutely.
There was that hype
like
around
a Blair Witch effect.
And also like Cannibal Holocaust. You had things like that were like video nasties that were being pulled and ripped off the shelves, especially during the 80s, because it was like, our kids shouldn't be watching this. But of course...
Yeah.
You dare each other. You're like, hey, can we get away with this?
Yep.
And you know, that's the thing with horror. You feel like you shouldn't be watching this.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that's what really entices us into it.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, because it, like I even make mention, you know, when we would go to the video store, it had like that whole section. And I kind of liken it to almost like as if you're going in the porn section. You know, it's like that off limits kind of element to it, you know, except it doesn't have the little hangy pearls or beads or whatever.
And the little flashy sign.
Yeah, exactly.
Adults only.
Yeah. But it did have that, you know, aura of like off limits or like, you know, you shouldn't be doing it. But when I first got into it, it was just like everything was so good because like that's when, you know, it was late 70s, like mid 80s, early 90s, all that stuff was out and a lot more prevalent. And it's just, there's so much good shit from like that era. Like to me, I don't know, like late 80s, early 90s is my wheelhouse. Like that is where I think horror was definitely the best.
Yeah, definitely same for me. I also, even though I'm very young, there was still video stores when I was growing up. It was besides Blockbusters because you also had like the mom and pop shops that had like, you know, different sections dedicated to stuff. And of course, my dad, he would go to the horror movie section because he's like, oh, well, what do we got? What's new, you know? And I remember, you know, he would say, no, you go over there with mom. You go stay in like, you know, the more kiddie Disney and all that other stuff. Yeah. But, you know, there was just this little bit of me that was like, I want to go where Dad's going. What's he doing? You know? And, you know, I finally went around that direction and like Dad was like, okay, well, a couple times he went into the video store without Mom. And then we were able to get away with it a little bit, you know, or whatever was on the display cases as well.
Yeah.
And I just remember, you know, picking up the different videos and looking at the cover art.
Yeah, that's some of the best things about like the early generation of horror and stuff like
you
that.
Can't replicate it. And I know we're sounding like old fossils right now, but you cannot replicate that with digital media and streaming. No, there's no way. There's something about just picking out this treasure that you find. And looking at this art that has either like actually been hand drawn half the time. And sometimes it has nothing to do with the movie at all. It's just meant to like surprise you. Like comes to mind Chopping Mall that has nothing to do with the movie, but that that artwork sold you.
Absolutely.
You know?
And that was kind of a cool part of it too, is like, you didn't know shit about these movies. You know, like internet, not around. You know, when I was like going to the video stores, and the only way you learned about, you know, stuff was like, okay, if you read Fangoria, okay.
Yeah.
But then other than that, like, there wasn't too much in this area that you could do. So you would go, and that's what you'd basis what you watched, you know? It's just like what looked cool, you know, like what piqued your interest. And half the time, like, I don't even remember reading the backs. Like, I just think we were like, yeah, I'm down.
This is the one I want.
Yeah, exactly.
It's got a half-naked woman on it. Yes, please.
Yeah, we're good to go. So yeah, that for me is a big part of, you know, my early years getting into horror and stuff like that. And earlier on, like, I always tell the story, anybody that knows me, with like, my brothers would when I was really, really little, they would watch Unsolved Mysteries. And like, they would lock me out. And I, for some reason, would be so terrified of Unsolved Mysteries, but they would like shut all the lights off, and I'd be like locked outside the room, just by myself, like crying, like this little kid, just crying. But like, you know, that in a weird way, that kind of got me interested in like spooky stuff, or stuff that scared me, and things like that. So
yeah, and also, you know, maybe what kind of interests you in true crime as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then that, you know, for me, I for a brief time, for about 5 years, was involved in the juvenile justice system. I worked in a local JDC. Worked in 2 outreach programs in Florida. One was in Brooksville, Florida. And so I definitely have a love for like the psychology aspect of it. And, you know, you can learn a lot from just certain types of people by just like, you know, observing. And that really was my job. You know, the place I was in was not like a, you know, lock and throw away the key type facility. It was, you know, definitely like group therapy, you know, encouraging you to take ownership. And, you know, I would observe for most of it, because we would have all walks of life, from anything from like, you know, murderers, armed robbers, arson, sexual crimes, you know, and these are all juveniles. So all sorts of stuff, anything you can imagine. Because with the facility I was at, any juvenile that any crime was committed, we had, I believe it was 72 hours that we would hold them, and then they would go before a judge, and then the judge would determine like what they're going to do. So if they need to go to like a mental facility, then they'd be awarded that. If they were remanded back into our custody, and then they had like a regular trial date scheduled, then they would come back with us. Some kids would get sent to Department of Corrections that committed major crimes. If they were getting waived to an adult, we would ship them to DOC. So yeah, all sorts of stuff. I ran the gamut, from your kid that's skipping school to someone that literally was in a gang fight and stabbed someone in the neck and killed them. So yeah, that kind of sparked my interest in true crime quite a bit for me. But you know, I'm sorry. I was gonna say, it just it's fascinating. I find it very fascinating as human beings, why we do some of the things we do.
Definitely. Yeah, no, absolutely. Like, I love that that's where your interest in true crime came from, because I did not know that in particular about you. So that's and thank you for all that you did for those young people. That's quite the feat. I can imagine. I know for me, true crime, I'm one of those people that had a favorite serial killer. I'm not happy to admit that at one point in time in my life.
Society's set up to glorify him, so.
Yeah, so
you
like...
can't be sad you took the bait.
Yeah, right. And so, like, the more I got into, especially in high school, and also going through actually schooling to become a mortician, I started to realize this is all real stuff. This is not something to be taken lightly. Like, these... whatever has happened, you know, between these family dynamics, at least we saw a lot of family dynamics when it came to like murders or, you know, things happening to other people, or even car accidents, you know, that sort of thing. It made me realize, no, these are real people. This shit actually happened. And honestly, I'm not going to lie to y'all, but like, what really helped me understand that is I started making a quote-unquote fan fiction about Friday the 13th, but from a mortician's perspective.
Interesting. Okay.
So I basically started writing this fan fiction about how each of the characters, afterwards, the characters that died, and how their families were dealing with their death. And that really solidified, oh my God, this is a real thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, my interest in true crime has now gone a more positive direction.
Yeah.
And I definitely thank my line of work for that as well, or my career.
Yeah. And it's funny that, you know, as you're telling that story, I'm thinking, like, my objective and my goal for the kids was to keep them from seeing you.
That's...
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. You know, like, that is... And that's why I worked with kids. I will not work with adults. To me... Like, I've seen the adult system, and the percentage of change is just so minimal nowadays. When you're an adult, like, you're set in your ways. But a lot of these kids, you know, I am very sympathetic to their environment and, you know, their upbringing, and especially kids that were adopted. Blake was adopted. And to see that, you know, in some instances, a lot is just those circumstances which is affecting the child. And then if you can, like... steer them onto something. Like, sometimes it's as simple as a hobby. You know, like a lot of the kids that I was working with in Florida, you know, I had several kids to this day, you know, I always wonder if they went off and played, you know, college football or different things like that. Because, like, at Florida, there's something in the water, but that state breeds athletes. I had some kids, like, there's this kid, I won't use a name or anything, but he was 16, and he was probably my size now. So I'm 6'1" and probably about 235.
Wow.
And he was that at 16.
Oh my God.
And was insanely fast. Just insanely fast. And he was like this dominant kid. And it's like, dude, what are you doing here? Like, you need to be on like a football field, or because that was his passion. He loved it. And that facility was cool because they would pluck kids out of the system that they felt had a chance to actually like take this system seriously, take the program seriously, and then get them on the right path. But that's one of the big reasons why I chose to work with kids, is because you can actually affect them. Like, turn them on to football, turn them on to religion, turn them on to music. And those things can actually change their life, because a lot of times it's like, dude, just cut the shit out. Like, you're hanging with a stupid crowd. You know it. Like, find something and lose yourself in it. You
Absolutely.
know, and you'll save your life. So yeah, I really think that, like, looking back on it, that was my main objective, is just keep them from seeing you. Yeah. You know, keep their families from seeing that. So.
That's such a good way of putting it too. You know, you're in a particular business for so long that you sometimes forget, you know, the little things like that. Yeah. You know, your job was to prevent them from dying.
Yeah.
And that's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, you know, one of the things that definitely kept us, or at least kept me, like, kind of to segue into our next thing is, you know, one of the things that kept me from, I wouldn't say necessarily becoming a delinquent. I was never quite that brave.
Yeah.
But more so when I was struggling with depression and unfortunately suicidal thoughts.
Yeah.
One of the things that I turned to often was metal. And I was very big into metal and into the metal scene when I was in high school. Actually, my father took me to my first metal concert.
Yeah.
And that was a good time. And I remember seeing that mosh pit for the first time. Like, what is this?
Yeah.
Oh, it was the coolest thing. It was literally all these kids getting out their rage, all their anger, all this frustration. It was almost as if, like, okay, for me, I am very much a mosher. At least I used to be. I don't know if I have it in me anymore, being a mother.
Yeah.
But back in the day, which wasn't that long ago, but that was what kept me, I felt, almost sane, was that I saw these kids going out there. They probably have shit that they're going through in their life.
Yeah, of course.
And in that mosh pit, they're all one. Yeah. They're all a community. They're all going through it together.
Yeah.
and it's just a mix of them. They're all getting it out. They're all not intending to hurt anybody.
There's always a level of respect. Like, I'm not a big mosher myself, but like, there's always a level of respect.
Absolutely.
Someone falls down and you pick them up.
Exactly.
Like, that's just like an unwritten law.
That's like mosh pitting 101.
Yeah.
You know, what moshing 101 is just, you see somebody that's hurt, you pick them back up. You accidentally smack someone in the face, you ask to see if they're okay.
Yeah.
Somebody loses their fucking glasses in the mosh pit.
Yeah.
You help them go find them.
Yeah.
Everybody is just, the metal community is just so welcoming and so sweet.
Yeah.
You couldn't find a better place for people to hang out in. And like that, I feel like helped me get through so many of my difficult times, not just the music, but the community behind it too.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like, you know, metal and horror and all that is kind of, absolutely. They kind of go hand in hand. You'll usually see, you know, at a metal show, a kid with like a Jason shirt, or they got an Exorcist shirt, or they got some, you know, horror movie on there.
And there's a lot of links, whether it's through, you know, Alice Cooper, whether it's through King Diamond, whether it's through now Ghost, you know, several artists out there that it's like, you know, very much theatrical. I mean, you could say Slipknot too, stuff like that, that is very much like a theatrical performance. And a lot of that has parallels of it, you know, like creepy characters, spooky characters, you know, like hiding your identity and different things like that has parallels definitely with metal. And like when you're talking about that, I'm imagining your like 4'1" self being out in the mosh pit, like me not even seeing you.
Like, honestly, that was all the time. Oh, there goes that scrappy little kid.
Yeah.
There she goes.
So for me with music, I come from a family of musicians. So I got that gene definitely. So I'm a drummer, not really actively, but hey, I guess it never dies.
Yeah, no. Once a drummer, always a drummer.
Yeah, I started playing when I was 16. My mom bought me a drum set. I think I was just like going through some, you know, 15, 16-year-old like bullshit. I don't remember what it was, but like I was down in the dumps and she, you know, got me a drum set. Because I would, you know, always be tapping on stuff, like always. And a lot of times I'd be tapping something and someone would be like, dude, I know that song. And they're like, oh, you're a drummer. And I'm like, no. I tap on things.
I recognize that tune.
Yeah. So I started playing when I was 16 and was in a band that was like a straight edge hardcore band back in the day. And I had only been playing drums. I mean, my dates are a little messed up, but I couldn't have been playing drums for more than 6 months and played my first show. And so I got into like that scene, I guess you'd say, and then I kind of branched off more to metal, playing in metal bands around here and stuff like that. So for me, you know, my musical background is playing metal and playing those shows, you know, locally and doing some out of state. Like I've done some of that stuff, but I stopped and moved away from this area and just didn't pick it back up. I don't know, maybe in my later years I will, but you know, so for me, I always loved metal from an early age. Again, my middle brother was a big influence and, you know, listening to some stuff just like, you know, early Megadeth. I think it was like the first one that comes to mind. Countdown to Extinction is probably one of my top albums.
It's so good.
Yeah. And so, yeah, it really just kind of got into that. And then, you know, playing shows with like, finding out what hardcore is when you don't really know what it is. Like, right? You know, playing shows and being in like just a metal band, no melody, like just straight, you know, rough vocals with my dude Neil that I'm sure will be on episodes. He was a vocalist in one of my bands. But seeing these kids like doing these windmill kicks and like picking up change and yeah, and I'm like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah,
what is this shit?
Don't ever fucking do. Kids, listen to me, because I swear to God, if I see your asses out on the mosh pit fucking doing karate shit, I'm gonna kick your ass. This is Grandma Metalhead talking to you. Don't fucking do it. It's annoying, and you're gonna kick somebody in the face, and it's gonna be a bloody mess. I don't want to pick that shit up. So please don't. Yeah, and they had like, you know, not really knowing what that really was, because it was at like the beginning of it, you know, and I very much, one thing I hate with the music industry, period, is I hate when fashion and music collide.
I think that's the worst thing ever. And that was early hardcore. Like, all the kids wore the same shit. They did the same things. And it was like, I get it. It's their way of fitting in. But, like, my God, have some individuality.
Believe me, this happens with the goth community as well. And, ooh, that's a hot take for later.
So, yeah. But, I mean, for me, you know, after not playing music now, but it's still a huge... I mean, shit, this morning I probably listened to my headphones for 3 hours before I really got up and doing a lot of things and even hitting the shower. Just music to this day is a huge part of me because it's the only thing that I can do that really just occupies that its own space. Like when I'm listening to music, I'm not thinking about anything else. It's very similar to when I'm playing drums. It's like when I'm playing drums, you know, like I don't get stage fright, like, you know, because you're in your music and like that's all that exists literally at that moment. And there's very few outlets in life, especially nowadays as you get older, that can shut out everything. And for me, the only thing that really does that, unless it's a pretty badass video game, that's the only thing in my life really that can drown out every bit of noise.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. I mean, that's the thing with metal and just music in general. It can transport you somewhere else. Yeah. And that's exactly, you know, why I got so much into metal, you know, or I think why anybody really gets into metal is just you're able to kind of drown out everything else around you, not just like outside stuff like that you can physically see, but also, you know, stuff that you can't tangibly, you know, express. So like thoughts that are just driving you nuts in your head, you know, bad things or maybe even little stressors. All of a sudden, that music starts playing and all goes away.
Yeah. And for me, like the musicianship too, like I geek out still to this day with my girlfriend and like, oh, hey, watch this video, which it's like a drum video. So I'm sure she's not retaining it like I am, but I'm just like, you know, popping a boner as I'm just, like watching, you know, some dude play and like, oh my God, that's so, you know, difficult or whatever. And musicianship, as far as metal goes, my God, the past 10 years, like the amount of people that can play guitar now than if we rewound to 10 years with the proficiency and the skill and the accuracy, it's like 100 to 1. You know, back 10 years ago, there was like a guitarist that could play as good as a lot of these guys are. And it's the same thing with drummers and stuff too. And it's like, holy shit, you know, like people are just evolving as humans and being able to play these instruments better than I would even imagine. Cause like I look at, you know, some of my favorite drummers back 15 years ago and I'm like, dude, they couldn't even hold a candle to like some of these drummers that are playing in metal now. You know, it's insane. So that's something that's definitely, you know, fascinates me and keeps me going because it's almost this like, who's going to top who, you know, type thing. Like who's going to learn this technique and who's going to teach it to, you know, these people and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, that's another element for me in music nowadays that I really respect.
Absolutely. And not to mention, you know, it's nice that we have you that knows the ins and outs of like, you know, I don't want to say the industry, but the scene, you know, like the actual playing part of it, you know, whereas I'm just a listener. Just, you know, I'm there for the show, you know.
Absolutely.
But like, it's nice to hear that from you. And hopefully, you know, with the podcast is we're hoping that we'll have actual local Midwest metal bands to be able to come and join us on the podcast, whether it be talking about, you know, horror and metal or just metal in general and what all they like and what got them into it. We just want to be able to promote more people as well, you know?
Yeah, and we're gonna, like, for those of you that are listening, I mean, part of this podcast is we really want to do events. You know, we have some events in the pipeline. You know, we'll post more on social media and stuff, but, you know, we're trying to put together a zombie pub crawl. You know, I've had talks with Ivy about doing a Krampus thing toy giveaway, you know, like Toys for Tots or something. But we're down for, like, you know, doing a live podcast at a metal show, supporting, like, local bands, you know, like we sure be down to have local bands on. And if you want to promote and all that sort of stuff, like we're all about that. There is no real set format to this podcast, and that's what I think I like about it. And maybe, you know, if we're 2-3 years into it, we may have a more set format, but like we're really open. So we're open to interaction. So if anyone is listening and has interest, you know, in this immediate area, like, or even outside of it, we're down to kind of like do different things. And I think that's one thing that makes this exciting for me is it's like anything goes. I kind of look, and if, we're going to try and shoot and do one a week, that's our thoughts. And I'm thinking like, hey, 1 week I may be going to like some haunted house. And then the next week I may be backstage at some show, like in a back room doing a live podcast with a band that's getting ready to go on or has come off. Or I may be at a homeless shelter donating clothes. Like to me, that's something that's really got me so excited for this podcast and really making it a huge part of my life. So, yeah.
And that's a big thing with our podcast, too. We're all about community here. Yeah. We're not here to make a buck. We're not here to do anything like that. We just want to have fun.
I'll be happy with 20 consistent listeners. Like 20 is my goal. I'm good.
Right? I'm totally okay with that. Just as long as, you are having fun, we're having fun, everybody's staying safe, we're all having a good time. That's all that matters to us. We just first off want to just have a good time. 2, we want to help out the community if we can in any way, whether it be supporting local people or helping like we said before, like metal bands get a start or a jumping off point, spread the word that they're amazing people. And then I think the other thing is just I'd love to get to know more people. I think it's just so fun to meet more people, even if this reaches outside the Midwest, just to get to know horror fans or fans of metal in our community, because it's such a niche thing, but yet everybody has kind of a little interest in it,
Absolutely. And it is truly Midwest. So like, we're located in Indiana, but like we may be talking about a true crime story that happened in Dayton, Ohio, or Lexington, Kentucky. I go to the horror convention, so I will talk about Days of the Dead Indy, Days of the Dead Chicago. I want to go up to Screamer's Costumes, which I told you about in Detroit.
Oh my God, that'd be so fun.
But yeah, it's very much like Midwest regionally, not just the state of Indiana or anything like that. So yeah, that's kind of definitely what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, just kind of wrap us up here, since we're at the kind of halfway mark, I guess, or a 30-minute mark. One of the things that we definitely want to, keep you guys aware of is that, we're going to, like you said, that we're going to try to post every week if we can. These first couple of episodes that are going to come out are just going to be there. So you can binge them if you'd like. Yeah. But do know that we'll take a small hiatus afterwards and then, try to create more content and hopefully maybe some videos as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
We like to do more visual stuff, like you said, showing off like maybe Spirit Halloween or going to Days of the Dead con and Gen Con or anything like that along those lines that are horror based.
Yeah, absolutely.
We also, of course, want to try to bring more horror news.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whether that be a new movie that's coming out, our takes on it, anything like that. I know we got several of them coming down the pipeline. We have the new Exorcist movie that's coming out. We also have I think it just came out, The Voyage of the Demeter, the Dracula one.
Yeah.
And then we have a couple other ones from Blumhouse that I'm sure they're putting out something.
Yeah, and there's even stuff. So a little about me is like I don't watch anything in the theaters. I'm a media collector, so when it comes out on DVD, like I grab it, and so that's when I usually watch it. So for me, what is it? Scream 6 now?
Yeah,
Scream 6. Yeah. And then Evil Dead Rise.
Yeah, right? It was the fourth one that just came out.
So that
or fifth, I guess. Where are we at? Yeah, we're on 5. We're on 5.
All right, okay, cool. But stuff like that. So yeah, I'll always update y'all on that, and definitely the conventions, because that's something that I absolutely love. And the vendors is why I go to the conventions. It's just amazing stuff. I buy like local vendors every time I go there. It's just anything from. I bought a doll Otis that has a little stuffed bunny or bunny character that it's getting ready to kill from House of a Thousand Corpses.
That's wonderful.
To a lot of artwork too. So I've bought a lot of artwork at those conventions. So that's something that I love doing.
That's awesome to support local artists as well as small businesses. I think that is so important because fuck the man.
Yeah, exactly.
We're here to help other people.
Absolutely. Sweet.
So to end it, maybe we can share.
Sure, yeah, a little personal. So favorite movies, like what you're really into. Like, I mean, for me, it's insanely easy, but I'll start with you. So, what's favorite movie? Like, what is your thing right now with horror?
So my favorite right now that I'm obsessing over, which has just been a recent thing. I feel really stupid about it.
Hit it.
All right. So right now what I've been obsessing over, and those of you that actually know me that are listening to this podcast are going to be like, you did, huh?
Say what?
So, yeah. Are you sure? Is this the same Ivy? I've been really obsessing over the Exorcist franchise.
I just bought an Exorcist shirt like last week. Green and
Purple?
No, just straight
green.
It's like the front scene with the dude standing in front of the house.
Yeah. Like, well, we have
briefcase.
Yeah, we have the poster.
Yeah, but it's like the top is almost like a gargoyle.
Oh, interesting. It's like Pazuzu.
Whatever that. You say Pazuzu, I say Pazazu. No, I don't even know what the hell Pazuzu is. But yeah, it has like a gargoyle or some demon. I don't know.
Nice.
I haven't watched Exorcist in probably like 8 years.
So a little bit of background on The Exorcist for me is I really hate that movie. I absolutely hate it. I can't stand it. I watched it once as a child. Never again, ever. No. I even look at a picture of Reagan and I freak out. But my recent, obsession over it has been I just finished the Exorcist novel by William Peter Blatty. And oh my God, it was wonderful. I loved the hell out of it. the hell out of it. But I loved it. Yeah. I loved it a lot. And from there, I've been kind of trying. I am not watching that movie again, the first one, but I've been kind of revisiting the second and the third movie, especially the third movie. I love that movie so much. It is a straight detective story, and it's so good. And now with this new one that's been coming out, I'm just curious. What's this gonna be about, really?
Yeah, I know nothing, so I'm keeping it that way.
It's supposed to be like what everybody has been doing, where they do a fresh reboot of like, oh, the other movies in the franchise don't exist, but this is the true sequel.
Yeah.
But it's like, we had Exorcist 3 that was literally based on Legion, which was the actual sequel to the
Hopefully
books.
It's not a money grab. Sounds like money grab to me.
Right.
But hopefully not.
Right. So I that's my recent obsession in horror. It's not my favorite horror movie at all. My favorite horror movie, for those that know me, I'm kind of basic, but it's going to have to be Pet Sematary. And the reason for that is because it's literally kind of what made me become a mortician.
Yeah.
Actually, the fascinating thing about it was that it was just such a horrifying tale to me.
Gage dying is one of the best scenes in like horror movies
history.
Yeah.
And now with a young son that I have now, it terrifies the hell out of me.
Yeah, absolutely.
So now it's, as being a parent, you just, and even before I was a parent, that was just always something that like got stuck with me, was the death of a child. And I just, I thought about it a lot, and I was like, well, you know what? If I could help more individuals that are going through that grief process, I'd love to try.
Yeah.
So that kind of, helped me steer in the direction of becoming a mortician, and that was just kind of interesting,
That is interesting. Well, for me, to me, I'd like to think it's pretty blatantly obvious, but Texas Chainsaw Massacre, that's my shit. Specifically, number 2, which is, in my opinion, the greatest horror movie ever created. I absolutely love that movie. Chop Top being, I think, the best character ever created. Bill Moseley plays that character absolutely outstanding. I love the quirkiness of it, the stupidity of it, like the hilarity of it. Like, I can quote the shit out of that movie. But so yeah, a lot of t-shirts that I have are Texas Chainsaw Massacre. A lot of the figures that I collect are specifically Chop Top, and actually met Bill Moseley. So I didn't recently go to conventions. I should say I didn't go to conventions up until recently.
Okay.
And got to meet Bill Moseley. And I'm not the type to like geek out on a celebrity or anything, but I totally did with Bill Moseley. Like, I didn't even want to go up and like say anything to him. The table was empty, and my girlfriend actually convinced me to go, just like, go up there now because there could be a line or something. But meet him and getting like a signed picture. And keep in mind, I can literally quote the shit out of this movie. And he asked me a question. I wasn't expecting it. I'm just thinking like, you say hi, you sign picture,
Yeah, right.
I go, you know? And he's like, what's your favorite quote? And I like blank. And I could tell you like my favorite Chop Talk quotes. I could tell you a plethora of them. But the only thing I can think to say is, I know you don't say this, but my favorite quote is sure burnt my beans bad on that one. And that's when Drayton gets buzzsawed in the butthole and climbs underneath the table and sticks his hand back, sees blood, and then says, hey, you know, sure burnt my beans bad on that one. And, you know, he kind of chuckled and stuff because, like, it isn't even his line. And I'm like, oh, my God, sitting there thinking, like, I couldn't name one Chop Top line. Mm-hmm. And so, like,
you were starstruck, man.
I totally was. I leave and I'm like, damn it. No, my favorite line, Mr. Mosley, is it's like death eating a cracker. Like, that's my favorite line by you, period. So, yeah, I totally geeked out for that. But I also lived in Texas. So one of the places I go to frequently, because I go to Texas multiple times a year, is the Texas gas station in Bastrop, Texas. So those of you who don't know about this place, it's absolutely amazing. One of my favorite places on this earth. So it's the gas station in the scene for the first Texas Chainsaw Massacre. When they're driving the truck and then Drayton comes with like the dude that's mentally handicapped or something and he's walking back and forth trying to wash their windshield and they're getting directions. So it's literally that gas station.
That's so cool.
A gentleman bought it. I don't know much about the guy. I've talked to his wife actually, but I didn't ask like what he did, but I'm pretty sure he's involved with Friday the 13th movies.
Nice.
I don't know if he's an actor from that or if he was like an executive producer or something, but it's the actual gas station. They have the van, the green van.
So
they have
cool.
the truck that's in it. And the thing that's really cool about it is it's out in middle of nowhere-ish. Now, Bastrop is becoming overpopulated like all of Travis County in Austin, Texas. So it still has an element of being out there, but there's cabins in the back that you can stay and like rent. And I've stayed overnight there, and they'll have like events where they'll play movies out on the big screen. But when you walk in to the place, it is a horror collector's dream.
Oh,
the place
God.
isn't that big, but it is literally packed, filled to the brim with like all sorts of stuff. Anything from, you know, your popular Toonie Terrors to like, I bought this Chop Top action figure that I spent way too much fucking money on, but whatever. To like blankets, Texas Chainsaw Massacre t-shirts, signed memorabilia. Danielle Harris was there about a couple weeks ago.
That's so cool.
So she had a signed meet and greet there. All sorts of shit like masks and buttons. My Leatherface air freshener I bought there, hanging from my car.
That's awesome.
So yeah, that place is amazing, and there's so many cool places throughout Texas. There's the Texas Chainsaw Massacre house. That's actually a restaurant. I think I heard recently it's been sold. Yeah, it was a restaurant.
Oh, that's cool.
The owners, it was weird because they didn't play up to the movie that much, which I thought was weird.
That's a missed
opportunity.
opportunity.
They had a couple pictures and like a cardboard cutout. It's my understanding. I never went. But yeah, it wasn't like the
no
the gas
bone
stations.
Couch or anything like that.
No.
Come on now.
I know, but bone couch. Don't even get me started. So I'm gonna tell it real quick. So I met the owner's wife at the gas station and just talking to her, and she could see how passionate I was about horror movies. So she was like, yeah, you know, the Chop Top I bought. She was like, I just wanted you to know that's my husband's personal collection.
Oh,
she's
my
like,
God.
he had a box of 30 and this is down to 2. And I bought the second to last one. And she's like, these are out of print. These are completely done. And I'm like, oh, I know. I already know. Like if it's a Chop Top toy, like I know about it. And so that's why I spent what I did. I didn't spend like $500 or anything stupid, but it's completely out of print. But she's like, it's from his personal collection. So she started showing me pictures of his collection. And I mean, she's like scrolling through, and they bought a new house, and she said it's 18-foot ceiling, 18-foot ceiling walls, and they're building custom shelves up to 18 feet.
Oh my God.
And he has like the original grandma's outfit. So like in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, when they run up the top, grandma, when she steals the chainsaw, he has that bust. Like the suit that the person was wearing.
That's amazing.
He has one of the chairs that they were sitting at the dinner. Yeah. And he has a side table from it too. He has a couple chainsaws. He has all sorts of masks. Yeah, like he has... She showed me just the Leatherface masks that he has, and there were probably 30 different Leatherface type masks, a lot of them signed. Mm-hmm. So I'm guessing he's in the film industry because the shit that he has, I'm like, dude, how the
or where'd you get these from? An auction?
Exactly. So no, he's got a lot of original stuff, and I was just like blown away. And I mean, you can tell that when you walk into his store, that it's someone who knows their shit. Yeah. Like someone who really has money to spend, but really knows their shit. And they also do barbecue. So their slogan is "We Slaughter Barbecue."
That's awesome.
So it's pretty cool to go. Yeah, and they sell chili. Which, funny story, I've never had because I was waiting to have it with Blake. And then it's kind of sad, yeah. But when he passed away, obviously I haven't. So I have to figure out a reason now to have it. And I think I should just do it.
Yeah, just do it. Well, yeah. I mean, this whole podcast is in memoriam of him. So maybe we'll just go sometime and just cheers to you, Blake.
Yeah. So it's cool to have chili, from the actual gas station in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So yeah, I can nerd out and talk about that shit forever. But yeah, that's my big thing. It's, Texas Chainsaw Massacre to me. Not a lot of the new bullshit. Like, I don't go for
You didn't watch the Netflix one?
No, I've watched them all. I mean, I watch them all, but it's like,
Nothing beats the first two.
No. And, well, for me, so there's 1, 2, and 3. So Leatherface is Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3. Mm-hmm. That's the one.
The one with the commercial where it's like Excalibur, he comes out of the water with the chainsaw.
Yeah, that one is badass.
I'll never forget that.
And they actually had a toy of Leatherface 3, which he looks very distinct in that movie. And they had a toy there that I was like, $75. But I'm like, no, I can't do it. But yeah, it's a lot of rare stuff. But yeah, Texas Chainsaw Massacre is my shit. Like, that is my area of expertise for sure. So,
nice.
Yeah, just, not the Renee Zellweger one. But yeah, it's good.
Yeah, so we got a lot of fun things in store for y'all. We're looking forward to this and just putting out different episodes. And just as a side note, we will have a couple family-friendly ones. Just watch for them. Not all of them are going to be, but we're parents. We get it. Yeah. And, the other thing is like, how did we discover horror? When we were children.
Yep, exactly.
So we definitely want to have a couple more family-friendly episodes. So, yeah.
Yeah. Even events will do. Some, maybe not all of them, but we'll try to have like family-friendly elements to them and stuff like that too. So. Yep. Sweet. Well, we appreciate you all listening to us. Hopefully you stick through to more episodes. We'll have more, personal content, like, true crime stuff. Like I said in the beginning, so it's going to be hopefully a good ride for us. So yeah, we appreciate you. So we'll see you around.
Bye.
See you.